What's going on, everybody? It's Mr. Ayala and Dr. Vilk here on Fix Your Fate podcast. Today we're talking about dealing with breakups. So, you're in a relationship, they weren't that great, they cheated on you, or they just messed you up. So, you guys are broken up. What do we do? One of the things we have to think about is how we get ready for the healing process. Especially if there was an infidelity, that hurt really bad. That cuts us pretty deep if we're in a relationship, especially if it's a long-term relationship. One of the things that people seem to skip over is having that self-compassion for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you went through a breakup. People think like, oh, you either have to just, deal with it or just go through it, which really means to like repress all your feelings, don't deal with it, which is really wrong. I mean, you have to know that you're going to have to grieve this loss of relationship. Even as a crap relationship, it's still a loss nonetheless.
Right. I think a lot of people have this idea that, well, I should be over this by now, or, I was angry or hurt, I should get over this. But I think you do have to look at it in terms of it is, you're grieving. There's not really a timeline for how long or fast or slow this is going to take. You're grieving a loss, so you have a good relationship and that's painful. But you could also have a toxic relationship that you've gotten yourself out of, and you still feel lost because regardless, that person isn't there anymore. So I think having compassion and understanding for yourself that this is a difficult thing to work through. It takes some time, and your life is changing because there's one less person in it. You have to have self-compassion about that.
Yeah, and one thing you can do is be grieving and be in this broken state forever. So you can do that if you never work through the process, right? Mm-hmm. And you can get into new relationships, but they'll break apart the same way. You'll still have the same kind of problems. And one of the things that I believe is that after a broken relationship, especially like a really severe breach in a relationship or a hard breakup, like, you need to learn how to re-love yourself to allow yourself to love others and others to love you. Because that could be a really difficult problem. Sometimes we can block other people's affection, even if it's good, because we think back to, oh my gosh, this just happened to me in my last relationship, so everyone is going to do that to me too. You're scared of that, so that's one of the things you really have to do. Love yourself so others can love you and you can love them back how they want to and how you want to love them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also think that, in my experience, I've had a lot of people who initially come in and they tell me it's because of a breakup. But what we end up finding out is that there have been other issues that have always been there, that this breakup is sort of arousing these feelings to come back up. And what I mean by that is, a person could come in and feel like, they were sad in the relationship and the relationship ended, and now they're feeling depressed because it ended. But as we work together, that depression may have always been there. It's just really showing up now. So while you're working through a breakup, the timeline may actually kind of also be you working on something like depression or anger issues or guilt issues or sadness. So you have to think about that as well. If you're thinking, well, why am I so upset about a breakup that's been there for 2 years ago? Why am I still feeling sad? It may be good to consider that maybe there's some depression there that you haven't really worked through yet as well, and it's just coming up because it was triggered by this breakup. I think breakups arouse things that have happened in our earlier relationships that were a little bit traumatic. So relationships with our parents, whether it's, being punished for saying you have a feeling state, and then you feel guilty and like you did something wrong. And that can also transmit to then this breakup where you may start feeling guilty, but that guilt has always been there. So I think it's good to keep that in mind, that, you've brought things to the relationship before you were even in it. And those things may still be there when it's ended.
Yeah. I mean, guilt is a really big one that I see a lot of the time. A lot of self-attack from the person who was cheated on. They blame themselves, it was my fault, I should have seen it coming, and no. Most of the time, no. Most of the time, you really can't see it coming. It's not you doing it. People are sneaky, and it could be as sneaky as they want. But you have to let yourself go through those feelings. Even if they seem irrational or they seem wrong, let yourself feel like, okay, I should have seen it coming. Talk about it. Why should I have seen it coming? And feel that hurt. It's about letting yourself feel all that hurt, no matter what it is, and you have to let yourself feel a little bit more hurt than you're going to be comfortable with, because if you don't feel it, you're never really going to get over it, right? And then you'll bring this to your next relationship and pile on to this like mess of hurt. So you just don't want to do that. You don't want to keep just bringing this hurt to another relationship, because it's not fair to you and it's not fair to the new person.
Right, and allowing yourself to feel guilty and talk about it is useful because if you're talking about it, especially in psychoanalysis or psychotherapy, you can lead yourself into newer thought patterns or ideas. So, if I had someone telling me I should have known, I might ask, how come you should have known? How would you have known? Or, why are you responsible for this person's bad behavior? I mean, as a therapist, we're trying to get you to think about things in a little bit differently, and maybe you have a new emotional experience. So that's kind of why we say you may sort of have to suffer through some of these feelings and talk about them, because it's the only way to progress forward to maybe have a new experience in the therapeutic relationship, or just different ideas about how you can think about something.
Yeah. If you're in a therapeutic relationship, it's really good to talk about all the feelings, even the ones that are like nonsense that we were talking about before, where you blame yourself for it, but you aren't really to blame. And it is for the sake of progress, right? It's to have new thoughts and feelings so you can talk that out. And it's, there's a catharsis to it. There's a way of like, it kind of lets go some of that energy, right? It's not, going to fix everything the first time, but sometimes we just want to be listened to and understood, because most of the time we're not listened to, we're not understood. And especially in a relationship that breaks up, there wasn't an understanding or a listening. There's a lot of problems, right? Communication problems, or just whatever problems that the two people bring into the relationship. So one of the ways to heal, if you find yourself an analyst or a psychotherapist, it's really to pace yourself and let yourself go through all the feelings with someone else that's there to help you and that wants to really emotionally understand you, not just understand some facts about, this or that. I mean, that's a big, the emotional connection is a big way of being healed that an analyst can really bring for you.
Mm-hmm. And I think actually on the flip side too, if you feel happy about the breakup, if you feel relieved, it's okay to have those feelings too. I think that there's also people who break up with someone and it was the right choice for them, and the other person is really upset and they feel like, well, I can't be happy, if I'm happy about the breakup or relieved, I'm this bad person. No, you can feel whatever you're feeling. That person has the right to feel sad about it, but you might not have that feeling state. So if you left a bad relationship and you actually feel good, it's okay to laugh. It's okay to feel relieved about that.
Yeah, it's okay to party about it. It's okay to celebrate that you're out of a bad relationship. Like that's kind of what we hope for.
You chose life.
Yeah, you chose not to be miserable. Like, good for you. And then people will make us feel guilty about that, which is ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous, but it happens. So don't let people bring you down either. Once you get yourself in a good place. Misery loves company. They may just be miserable people too, and they want you to be miserable because their marriage or their relationships broke up too. So people pretty messed up. They'll want you to not feel so great sometimes. So surround yourself with the right people too, especially when you're in vulnerable situations.
Right. There may be some degree of suffering as you work through this, but I think it's also good to know that these feelings, they come up in waves. So you may be fine one minute and then, you have this surge of emotion and you're not really sure why it's coming up, but just kind of let it wash over you and know that feelings are fluid, and after a while you may enter a different feeling state. I think Adam mentioned having good friends to relieve some of that suffering. Make sure you're not isolating. Go out with your friends, go to the movies, go bowling, or do whatever it is you crazy kids do these days and have some fun to get out of that feeling state. I think that's really important in the healing process. I mean, the goal isn't for you to be tortured. It's just to allow yourself to know what you're feeling. But the second you're suffering, you're like, okay, I know what I'm feeling. You can get out of that feeling state. You're aware of it.
Yeah. And when you're around other people, especially around good, positive people, they won't let you rewrite the relationship in a positive lens. Because when we're suffering, we want the suffering to stop, and that's totally reasonable. And we'll think, oh, it wasn't so bad. Like, he only cheated twice, or she only cheated twice. Like, I could totally get over that. And, like, it was my fault because I wasn't paying attention. You good friends and good people will be like, no, stop being an idiot. Like, no, that's not how the relationship was. You were crying every 2 days, or something was always bad was happening. Like, so that's another way to help you actually deal with the emotional problems, not hide your pain, right? You deal with the pain, not hiding it.
Right, and not deny that these negative things might have happened, or not deny reasons that the relationship wasn't right for you. They may not always be the overt reasons that I think Adam is talking about too. That it might not be cheating. It might just be that this person, you just didn't see a future with them, and that's okay too, to end that relationship if it's not in your your best interest. I mean, Because if you think about it, it's also not good for them. What person wants to be with someone who doesn't want to be with them? You're doing them a favor too.
Yeah, it's okay to doubt, but balance that doubt off of other people that were around in that relationship, or can see the relationship from a distance. So there's not that kind of bias in there.
Right.
Don't bounce that doubt off of your ex-boyfriend, girlfriend's like parents. They'll have a severe bias one way or another.
That's true.
Yeah. So so all this is to help really relieve the suffering. You have to go through the suffering a little bit and deal with it, but it's to actually get to relieve it, so it's not with you for the rest of your life, right? And then you can also see like, oh, if I found this person, this type of person, and they didn't work out for me, you won't go back to that type of person. You can see them right away, because we're really good at finding like the really bad people for us. So it's really this is all in the service of finding the people who are actually good for us in a relationship.
Right, the people who are going to treat us right and will not engage in the negative repetitions from our past. Or if we do get caught up in some repetition in some way, being able to talk it through and see if the person is educable enough to change, and you change with them to change the relationship. That's how you fix your fate.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys, on that note, I think we're wrapping it up here. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I think we're good. If you have any comments and questions, please leave it below at the YouTube channel that you're listening to right now. Please like and subscribe if you like what we heard, and you can send us an email at fixyourfatepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to be on the podcast, you have any questions, you leave it totally anonymous. We won't know who is who. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Yeah, have a good one.